Okay, so I'm going to start by introducing myself. Thank you for coming to Supporting Your Teen's Career Search. I'm Kathi Terami. I work for a nonprofit organization that does career development around Vermont and New Hampshire. And my colleague Lauren Duran is on the Zoom. She will be adding some things to chat that we're going to be talking about here in person to make sure everyone can be engaged. And for the people on Zoom, if you have anything to share when we're interacting here, you can go ahead and type that into the chat, and Kathi here in the room will share that with me, so we can make sure everyone can participate. So our organization starts in elementary school with career awareness, believe it or not. There are a lot of people who can go into elementary school classrooms and talk about what they do for a living to let elementary students know about that. Have some kind of fun examples of guest speakers who have gone into the classroom, like a kindergarten classroom, and 5-year-olds, when they're learning about what people do for work, discover that their teacher is working. So that's where the awareness comes in. They thought maybe the teacher had to be there, slept there, lived there, didn't realize it was a career path choice that they were making. And then we build on that in middle school with exploration, things like identifying interests and doing things like job shadowing or going on workplace tours and just starting to learn about what people do for work, not necessarily choosing careers or career paths, but just exploring lots of different opportunities that are out there. And then in high school, we get into career preparation. So we have a high school career readiness course that is used in high schools all around the state, and it can result in an internship, something like that, so a little more advanced career preparation. And we do a lot of work around the state through VSAC and other organizations talking to students about what their aspirations are and what they're looking to do. And this is once a year that we get to work with parents, which is a lot of fun. So I would love to find out, before I keep going, who is in the room. You're all parents of high school students? So I'm seeing that there might be some students here. Can you raise your hand if you are a student? Okay, all right. So everyone is welcome to chime in. We're gonna have a lot of interaction, but especially students. If you hear anything that I say that sounds a little off, you're welcome to chime in with what you would like to hear me saying. I just spent yesterday with 240 sophomores. I did a lot more listening than talking. So I really love listening to students and finding out what they need and what they want, especially from adults. So I'd love to hear your input too. And then on chat, you're welcome to share anything about your role, who you are. I know I also see that there's some educators in the room that might also have students at this age. Okay, so to give you an idea of our reach, we've worked with 973 educators. We do a lot of teacher training. Over 38,000 students that we've worked with at all of those grade levels at, I think, 387 schools. And we also engage employers, so 1,600 employers who serve as guest speakers in the classroom. If that's something you're interested in related to your work, please let us know. And also hosting students on Job Shadow Day, internships, being mentors, things like that. So that's who we're working with. So I have questions for you. How many of you talk about career planning with your teen frequently? Raise your hand if you think you're frequently. There's no wrong answers. And in the chat, once you see all these, you can type in what you think it is. How about occasionally? That's what I expected. How about rarely? That's okay too. So this is what students say when we ask students that question. How often does an adult talk with you about your career planning? It's not parents specifically, but 70% say sometimes or hardly ever. A lot of times what we hear is there's a lot of talk about education after high school, colleges, but a lot less about careers. That's okay, but it's just something to note that we're hearing from students they'd like to also be hearing about career options and things they might do after high school. So we will move into aspirations and interests. And Kathi, please let me know if anything comes up in the chat that you're seeing there that you want me to share here. So when I work with groups of adults, and I'm including this, I'd like to ask you to think back to high school. So here's me in high school. Think about what you wanted to do in high school. I wanted to be an interior decorator. That's what I was pretty sure I was going to do. I thought I was going to go to school for interior decorating, and I'd nail a job in interior decorating, and that's what I would do for the rest of my life. I did not do that. I ended up going into business school, got a degree in marketing, and I was sure that I was going to work for a major corporation in a very big city. Instead, I moved to Tunbridge, Vermont, 1,200 people, and I started working for a nonprofit organization, which in high school and in college, I had no idea you could earn a living in a nonprofit organization. So an example of something that I just was not exposed to in middle or high school or college that I learned about as an adult, and I'm still doing that today. I won't put a year on that picture, but you can maybe look at the hairstyle and guess. So think back for yourself. Does anyone want to share? Please share this in the chat too, people on Zoom, what you wanted to do after high school when you were in high school. What kinds of jobs were you interested in? Would anyone share? How about you? Actress. Okay. Anyone? Any other aspiring actresses on Zoom? I actually hear that a lot. Yesterday, in the students I was working with, we had several aspiring actresses. So I saw a few hands go up. How about you?
As a child, I wanted to be a lawyer, but by the time I was going to college, I wanted to be a sociology professor.
Wow. Okay, so well, can I ask, what do you do now?
I'm a psychotherapist.
Okay, nice. And how about the aspiring actress? What do you do now? You are acting now? Okay. So I'm just going to say that is unusual. I can be in a large room of adults. Usually the adults I tend to work with are a lot of teachers, but then I also work with employers. I do employer training. And when I ask a room full of employers, they usually work in human resources or some kind of management. I will ask them what they wanted to do. I usually use 8th grade. And I could have 100 people in a room, and I'd be lucky if I'd get 1 or 2 who are doing now what they aspired to when they were in 8th grade. So that's something really helpful as adults to think about. Developmentally, that is normal for people when they're in middle and high school to have career aspirations that might not be what they end up doing for a variety of reasons. So what I say to students is check in on your career interests when you're in middle school. You could check in on them every month because middle schoolers change their minds a lot about what they're interested in because it's based on what they're exposed to. High school students, I often say every semester, so like twice a year, check in on your career interests because they can change. In college, anyone here in this room change their major while they were in college? It happens. It's developmentally normal. It's not necessarily because of lack of information or bad information, but our interests change as we grow up and we are exposed to different things. That is okay. I have lots of things to say, but we'll move on. So for this, when I get together with students, I ask them what their definition of success is. As we get into their definitions, we separate out what other people are telling them success should mean and what success means to them. And we talk a lot about how that might change over their lifetime, depending on their circumstances. So yesterday, I heard, well, let me ask you first. What would be your definition of success for your student, your child, your teen, for after high school? Anyone want to share? Kids. So a definition of, well, no, I'm asking adults. I'll ask students after. Go ahead.
She picks something that she likes, and I know that if you go to work and you like what you do, it's a win-win.
Okay, I'm liking what I'm hearing.
Yeah, on top of that, if she makes the money that she wants, I'm a happy mama.
Okay, so this parent just said, if pick what you like, and if you end up doing what you like, she'll be a happy mom. She said happy mama. It was very sweet. So parents on Zoom, also go ahead and type into the chat what you think definition of success is. Anyone else want to share a definition of success, how you define it? And if you can take the mic, that'll help everyone on Zoom here. That's okay, that's okay. You were loud.
Sorry. I would tweak that just a little bit because I don't want my kids living in my basement forever playing video games. So I think whatever gives them a high quality of life where there is balance and there is happiness and they feel challenged by what they're doing, but also can do what they want to do when they're not doing what they do to make money.
Okay, great. I'm glad you took the mic because that would have been hard for me to repeat. So good job. Okay. So since we have some students in the room, do any students want to share what you think a definition of success is for you? Go ahead. Could you bring the microphone right here? Thank you.
Just like reaching a goal that you've had.
So having a goal and reaching it. Love it. Any other students want to share? You don't have to. I'm not pressuring you. Raise your hand if you do. If you don't, that's okay. I'm just going to share. Oh, go ahead, Kathy. Be happy with your work and self-supported is one of our Zoom participants. So yesterday when I was working with a sophomore class, it was really interesting, super simple. Things like, going to college and finishing college, happiness, family, money, lots of one-word, very simple answers the sophomores had. So those are students in 10th grade in high school. So I talked with the students a little bit about success. Often people think it's a straight line. I don't know if I have a plan. Oh, I do. Look at that. Okay. So you start here, you have a plan, and you follow this nice straight linear path to your goal and you achieve it, right? Is that what it looks like? You can probably guess what my next slide is going to look like. Now this is a very intentional non-linear path that I drew, and I drew in 12 different plot twists because on average in the United States, adults change their minds 12 different times. So in the United States, we change jobs and career paths 12 different times as adults. So some of us change less, like me. I'm an outlier. Some of us change a lot more. I co-present with someone at high schools who's changed jobs 26 times. So he and I together help with this average. So it's just something to think about. This is the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, tracks how many times people change jobs. What are the reasons people change jobs? Could be they move, could be money, could be looking to do something different, could be lifestyle choices, could be all sorts of things that could cause you to change your mind. Sometimes just changing your mind. You've tried that, now you want to do something else. Yesterday, the students I was talking to, I was asking them what career fields they had that they were interested in, and one said, I'm really struggling between being a lawyer or a physical therapist. When you have two things you really want to do, chances are you might try one of those, change your mind, and then try the other one. Those are two very different things. So it's hard to just pick one thing. We talk a lot with students about adjacent jobs, so you could maybe pick a field and try out different jobs within that field, or looking at what skill sets you have, what you're good at, and finding various occupations that all use those same skill sets. We'll talk about that a bit more too. This is something fun that we came across just a couple of weeks ago, and I don't think I've cited it here, but it's from VSAC, senior survey. There's a question on there that asks high school seniors, what do your parents or guardians feel you should do this fall? So these are seniors. I'm showing you this pie chart. Those are the sizes of the pieces of the pie. Before I let you see what the responses are, any guesses what that biggest chunk is there? Okay. And I'm not going to ask you to guess the sliver, but let's take a look at these responses. So that tiny sliver is join the military, other 3%, work 15%, continue my education. So I think I heard a lot of you say that. Just over half. 28.7% say they want me to do what I want to do. That's really interesting. I'd love to have longer conversations with students about that, but I think this is telling. This is very revealing, because I wonder what that would look like if we asked parents that question, what those pie pieces would look like. So this is a recent high school graduate. I love talking to students and listening to what they say and sharing that with other people. Be sure to let kids know they don't have to have it all figured out by the end of high school. Paths will shift as they learn more and gain experience, and new opportunities can come up when you aren't expecting it. Some wisdom from a recent high school grad. Students, if you have any wisdom you want to share with me, come up afterwards and I'll jot it down. I love collecting things that students are thinking about and sharing that with adults. Go ahead. Oh, wait for the mic, please.
My daughter seems to have the idea that she needs to know what she's supposed to be doing already. I mean, she's a sophomore in high school, and I'm trying to encourage her to do, exploration kinds of things, but she's sort of focused, which was the opposite of me. And so I'm wondering how I can help her understand the variability that you're pointing out it actually exists.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of pressure to have a plan. Planning is good. I promote planning. I think planning is a good time investment for everyone, but keeping open and having a lot of flexibility with it, planning. And I think this is key to not feel like you have to have it all figured out. I think that's what's key. There's a lot of pressure on students. And I've heard some students say that are in schools that I don't think are giving that message out, so I'm not sure. I think it's a combination of messages from a lot of different places. It can be overwhelming to think that you have to have it figured out. So I think it's something we need to think about, talk about, work on, but having some plan. I like to say knowing what your next step is. What is your next step? Have a plan, know you can change it, but what's that next step? And that could be like the goal, like having a goal and getting there. Okay, have any of you ever done a career interest survey yourself? Did you do one in high school? Okay, it probably was like me, it was pen and paper. So this is just an example of one. You don't have to do this now, but it's something we share with students. And actually, let me see. I think when you picked this up at the beginning, there should be an insert in it. And Lauren, if you can pop into the chat a link to the McClure Most Promising Jobs brochure. There's also a link to this insert in here. So it's also on here. There's a URL to it and a QR code here, so don't worry if you don't snap that. One thing I like to recommend to parents is take a career interest survey. Anyone, you can go and Google for one. This one's kind of nice because it's short, simple, and you don't have to give away any personal information to take it. So anyone can just take this very quickly. This version takes about 3 minutes. Don't do it now. I mean, you can, but it'd be better if you did it after. And what you can do is you can get the feel of what it's like to be asked, what do you like to do, what don't you like to do, and then have that conversation with your child. And you can have them do it. Chances are they might have done, students here, have you ever done a career interest survey? Okay, some high schools do them with all students. What we like to say is do as many as you can, try different ones, you're going to get different results, you will learn something from all of them. There's never any wrong answers. So it's like taking a test that all answers are correct. So let me just show you a little bit about this one specifically. This one uses Holland codes, which predate me, but they're still widely used in colleges for selecting majors, in human resources departments for recruiting people, putting people together on teams, and also in high schools for helping with career path work. So VSAC, they're called VSAC scores. The R stands for realistic. Those are the doers, people who like to do things with their hands, machines, build things, fix things. Investigative, those are the thinkers. Artistic are the creators, they like to design things. Social are the helpers. Those are human services jobs. Enterprising, these are the persuaders, a lot of times CEOs, business owners. Conventional, these are the organizers, people who like spreadsheets, things like that. So that's what these different interest areas are. And when students or adults, anyone takes this survey, they get scores that for each of these interest areas where they rate. I'm going to share with you mine. So these are my results. It's not surprising to me at all that I rank highest on social. I love to help other people. I'm in a nonprofit job helping students and teachers and employers and parents. And in my spare time at home, I volunteer for the public library, the historical society. It's what I do in my spare time too. I also score pretty high on artistic, but I don't really use much of that in my job at all. A little bit in my volunteer work. I'm in a community choir. I like performing, but I don't use that as much in my job. So this is something we talk about with students. Sometimes you can have high interests that you can translate into work that earns money, and sometimes you can have interests that you might pursue as hobbies and other things. Both are fine. I'm lowest in realistic and conventional. Low is not bad, remember. This is helpful to me. This helps me understand that I need to make sure there are people on my team that are higher in realistic and conventional, otherwise nothing will get done. I will just be out talking to everybody and never balancing the checking account. So our operations manager in our office, she scores highest on conventional, so we make a good team together. So it's a good message to students that you don't need to be good at everything, interested in everything. Find out what you're good at, pursue things related to that, and look for people to work with who might be different than you. So just based on what I described for adults in the room, do you know where you might sit on something like this if you took it? A lot of times students, after they take it, they say, yep, this matches what I think about myself. It's pretty accurate. Who thinks they'd be highest in realistic? You like doing things with your hands or machines. How about investigative? And go ahead and chat. You can write it in if you think you have an idea. Who are the thinkers? Are there thinkers in the room? I'm seeing nodding heads. How about artistic? Okay. You're braver because you're all putting your hands up. How about social? Awesome, my people. How about enterprising? Managers, business owners, entrepreneurs, great. And then conventional. Okay, good, we need you. So this is just a really good conversation starter with students. And students at high schools across Vermont are doing this in the classroom. So after they take the test, they can go through the U.S. Department of Labor and U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and find out all sorts of information on jobs related to their interests. They can pick job zones, which is like how much education and training do you want after high school? Now let's look at jobs related to all of your interests, your top interests. So there's a lot they can do to explore. And then in the brochure you're holding in your hands, there's a link to, I think it's like vermont.labor.gov. Lauren might be able to put that into the chat, where you can go and explore all of those jobs related to your interests right here in Vermont to see what's close by. So go ahead. You have a question? Do you have the mic?
I guess it's both a comment, but a fear as well as a question. When I hear about AI and, the global catastrophes, I wonder, are there really still all these different jobs out there that, are waiting for people to fill?
So that's a really good question for my colleagues at the Vermont Department of Labor who collect that data and share it around the state. They update that data every 2 years, so what we're going to open in a few minutes will tell you about job openings in Vermont for the top 10% highest paying, highest demand jobs in the state. But I think you're asking a really good question because we're seeing changes and changes that are happening faster than the data is changing. So I think time will tell a little bit for that, but it is something that we talk about, which brings us into a great conversation about essential skills. So we like to talk with students about skills that are in demand in almost every single occupation. If you can nail some of those skills, then as the market changes, your skills are adaptable to those different jobs. So it's really important for students to understand that early, because sometimes something you might want to do might become obsolete and you'll need to do something else. You might hear that in the news. I hear it at least once a week in the news about coders, like AI has taken over coding. But there are so many skills that you learn with coding that can be transferred to other occupations that can be helpful if you're thinking that way. So I have another question for you, and for everyone on Zoom too, if you write this into the chat. What is a skill you learned from your first job that you still use today? Think back to that first job. Wait for the mic. Tell us what your first job was, and then what that skill was.
My first job, I was paid in French fries, I just want to say. I was 12.
Okay.
So I was bussing tables, and I loved it. It was but it was all about like being on time. You had to be on time.
Okay, excellent. And you still have to be on time today, right? Okay, anyone else want to share? I love that example. One more. We'll do one more for this question, then we'll go to the next question.
During tax season, my dad would on the side do taxes for people, and he'd pay me $0.25 a file to alphabetize everything after. And I'm amazed how many times I need alphabetization skills in my work, and people around me who it like takes them so long to alphabetize things. So I thank him for the 25-cent a folder job.
Awesome, awesome. You got paid to learn that skill that you still use today. I love it. Okay, next question. As an adult, what is something you wished you had learned sooner? Okay, instant hand up.
Personal finance.
Okay, I hear that a lot. The high school I went to, fortunately, had a personal finance class that a lot of students took. When I first started getting into this work, I saw personal finance classes and financial literacy classes being eliminated from high school budgets around here. Now I see them coming back in some places, but it's really hit or miss. So it's a good one. Anyone else want to share something you wish you had learned sooner? Here's one here. Thank you.
It's okay to fail.
Ah, thank you. That goes right along with changing your mind, changing your majors, taking a step back before you can take a few steps forward. So that can ease some of that pressure we talked about earlier. Okay. So those transferable skills. We group these into 4 categories, starting with the letter C. I popped the first one up here, communication used in every single occupation. We tell this to students, that verbal, written, all sorts of communication skills, every job needs them. We hear this from every single employer. There's 3 more in the 4 C's. Any ideas what the second one is? It's another word for teamwork. Starts with a C. So for this slide, we have collaboration. So this is an interesting one because we talk about different jobs have different levels of working with others. Some have more independent components, some have more team components, but all of them at some point, every job, you will have to work with other people. I'm a people person. I'm high on that social score, so I really like working with others. I like collaborating. I like being on a team, but I have to do a lot of independent work before I can do some of that. So for me, it's a little bit of a struggle to get through that independent work, so something for students to think about. They could be the reverse. They could be very comfortable in an independent setting, and it's harder to work with others, so it's really important to learn to work with others. And thankfully, in schools and in classrooms, there's a lot of group work. So the third C skill set, this is where our artsy people are, but also problem solvers. Any guesses? Yeah, so creativity. So we hear from employers everywhere that they need creative people in their workplaces, looking at things differently. We hear that a lot. So the last one is a little tricky because it's 2 words, and the first word starts with a C. Oh gosh, you're on today. All right, so critical thinking. So the question that I have is, how many of you think you have skill sets in all 4 of these? Okay, come on, raise your hands. You do. You can't make it to adulthood without having communication skills, being able to work with others, being creative sometimes. And critical thinking, that's taking in information by listening, researching, watching, observing, processing that information, and making decisions with it. We do that every day. I did that when I was looking at the weather forecast and deciding what to wear and making sure I had sensible shoes on because of the long walk from the parking lot and up the stairs. We're always taking in information and using it to make decisions. The reason I share that with you is because a lot of high school students, when I ask, do you have any of these skills? They're like, no, but they all do. They just oftentimes don't know how to articulate it yet. So we talk about your first job interview. Do you remember your first job interview? Students, have you had an interview? People ask you questions about yourself, right? And if they say, what are your communication skills like? And you don't have an answer, or you say, no, I don't have communication skills, but there you are communicating, you always have some of these skills, so it's learning how to articulate it. And then also being able to realize what you need to work on more, What you might have a job interview and say, you know, I'm really good at communication, I'm super creative, but I'm not always that great at working on teams. I would love opportunities to do that more so I can get better at that. That sounds a lot better than I don't have any of those skills. So those are conversations that you can have with your children about skills and things you're good at. Everyone likes to say, I'm so proud of you for doing that, or great job, but actually talk about those specific things, like, that was really good communication, or wow, that surprised me how well you worked with others. Let's talk about that a little bit. So if you're actually using the language and talking about specific things, when you're expressing your enthusiasm for a job done well, that can be helpful. So helping your teen identify what skills they already have, building new skills, and demonstrating and articulating it to others. That's what we just talked about. Okay, so for career options, I have a question for you. This is a little bit of a guessing game. I don't expect you to know, unless maybe some of you work in workforce development or have some of this data at your fingertips. Any guesses how many occupations there are in the United States? Please, everyone on Zoom, type away into the chat what your guesses are. So these are not the number of jobs or the number of people working in jobs. These are the number of occupations. So veterinarian would be counted once, not the number of veterinarians or the number of openings. Okay, so it's a lot less. I'm doing this to help you be aware of this data that you're about to see. 100,000 or hundreds of thousands, a lot less, a lot less. Go ahead. Okay. Really? Okay, so we're gonna go with that, 831. So, okay, we share this number around the state at high schools and talk about it. So, in the United States, you have 831 different occupational choices. Now, you have a lot of choices of where those occupations might be, geographically, in what industry, in what sector. Are you doing that for military? Are you doing it for nonprofit, for corporate? So there's all sorts of variations of these occupations, but this is how many occupations you have to choose from. So how about in Vermont? Any guesses for how many are in Vermont? The clue you have is that it can't be more than 831, because 831 includes Vermont. 831. I wish. So we can think about this. Why would states generally have less than the whole country? What's an example of something in Vermont that we don't have that Maine has? Ocean. That's like the number one thing that'll hit, because there's a lot of students interested in marine biology and different oceanography kinds of professions, and they know that's tricky. We have Lake Champlain here, we have some marine stuff, but not anything that's really statistically significant for Vermont. So that's one example. What does Vermont have that other states don't have? So sugaring, I don't know. I need to call Matt Bearwitz on Monday and ask him if sugaring is statistically significant in Vermont as an occupation. All those, my drive up here, all that steam coming out of those little sugar houses. So yes, so we have ski lift operators. Does Florida? So there are some occupations some states have that other states don't. So how about one more guess for this? How many? Yeah. So just under 561. So people in Vermont have a choice of 561 different occupations here. So if you take a look at that brochure you picked up as you came in the door, we can look at some of that. So you can encourage your teen to do online research, informational interviews, that's asking people questions about occupations they have, workplace tours, job shadows, internships, just understanding the skills, education, and training needed for different jobs by asking people, but in your hands, and people online on Zoom. I think Lauren's put a link into the chat so you can access this digitally. You can take a look at the top 10% of the highest paying, highest demand occupations in Vermont. So there's roughly 60 in here. It's updated every 2 years because that's how often the Department of Labor updates their data. So this shows you here occupational titles So when we talked about 561 occupations in Vermont, these are the kinds of titles we're talking about. The 10-year projected openings, highlighted as the highest one in each category. We'll talk about that in a minute. Minimum education or training needed for entry into that field, and then the median wage. What does median mean? It's in the middle, not an average, because there are some people working in occupations that can really skew the average. So the Department of Labor uses median instead, because you could have someone working for a really successful company and they have an occupational title, but they're making millions doing it, but everyone else is making $80,000 doing it, so that would skew the average. There can be some vice versas on that too, people who aren't taking a paycheck for something they're doing or taking a low paycheck. So we talked to students about median. Half of the people in that occupation make less, half make more. So this is labor market information that we share statewide with middle school students. I brought this to 800 middle school students in the Northeast Kingdom in October. They understood it, were into it, asking questions. So you can share labor market information with your students. It helps if you understand it first. Go ahead.
Do you know whether those median wages are adjusted in any way for number of years in the job? Or like, someone right out of college as a fundraiser maybe doesn't have a median of 68,330.
That's a great question for the Department of Labor. So I think what I have heard them say is that these are generally for entry into these occupations. So what I usually tell students is if you have a lot of experience and more training, you'd make more. And if you have less, you'd be less. But I'm not 100% sure about that. So is it for all occupations? It's a good question. Lauren, maybe you can look that up and let us know in the chat. So I'm not sure. Good question. And those are the good kinds of things to talk about with your student and look up, find the answers to. So these categories here, these colored categories, are actually those VSAC codes. Nowhere on here does it mention VSAC or Holland codes, but I was saying before how widely used it is. So if you look here, you'll see, do you like to work with people? Social. Do you like to use your creativity? Artistic. Do you like working with your hands or machines? Realistic. So all those things we just talked about. Do you like to observe, learn, analyze, and solve problems? Are you organized and detail-oriented and like to work with information? Conventional. So these are the occupations. Those top 10% of those high pay, high demand occupations split up into 4 Holland code groups. They just combined 6 into 4. So there's a lot you can do with this information. And if you look here, you can find this same data at this link for all 561 occupations in Vermont. So if there's something your student is interested in or something you do for work that is not on this list, you can go right there and look it up. So this gets us into some of the Vermont labor market data. Okay, so a few noteworthy things that I want to mention. Influencing factors. Think back to when you had your first career aspirations. What influenced you, and what do you think influenced students today to pursue a certain career? And maybe some of the students can chime in. Any guesses? I'm not real good at reading lips. Parents, okay. Yes, have any of you ever been influenced by your own parents, or have you influenced your child to maybe pursue a similar career path? Or we talk a lot about negative influences. Maybe you don't want to do what your parent does for one reason or another, so they can be negative or positive. What other kinds of things? Go ahead. Social media. All right, let me put these up here. And you might have more. Entertainment, movies, television, social media, there you go. Peers, school, family would be where parents fit in. So that list could be a lot longer. It's just a few things to think about, all the influences we have on what jobs we might want to do. And I think back in the last 30 years that I've been doing this work when there's a certain TV show that gets really popular and I go to a high school and like 100 students in that high school want to work in forensics because they were all watching CSI or, whatever it might be. It's fascinating to see the outside influences and how that can affect There was a guest speaker who went into a high school who did a phenomenal job getting kids excited about law enforcement, and it was the biggest enrollment the next year that the police academy had ever seen. Just this one person making an influence on a big high school. So things like that, there's lots of influences, but we hope that they can take a look at some of the data behind some of those different career paths before they're making decisions. One thing that I did in preparation for talking with parents when VSAC first asked me to do this session was talking to a lot of different people. I talked to over 30 different high school counselors, college career counselors, college admissions, recent high school graduates, recent college graduates, human resources professionals at workplaces. And I said, what would be helpful for me to share with parents? I got a lot of interesting answers and a lot of the same answers from totally different people. So I'm going to share the results of that with you. The biggest one that topped the list was let your teen initiate the process. I just heard a few days ago talking with someone, I won't name names, who said, you know what I really struggle with? I struggle with a number of parents that call my office asking for an internship for their child. That may seem really helpful, but you're really missing out on an opportunity for your student to make that call and get those skills of doing it, even if it's hard and you think you'd be better at it. So that's an example. Listen and ask questions. Any of the trainings that I do with adults, like career mentors, workplace hosts, employers that we work with, we talk about the concept of you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen twice as much as you speak. When it's someone younger than you, it's really good to listen. Create opportunities for exploration and skill building. There's probably a lot of opportunities in your child's high school, but you can make some opportunities for that too. Try out some tools along with your team, like that career interest survey I just shared with you. Focus on strengths. We hear this a lot. Like there's a big focus on what a child is weakest at and spend a lot of time making that stronger. This is something we hear from a lot of workplaces, that if you focus on the strengths and what they're really good at and finding a career path that matches that, the rest will kind of fall into place. You don't need to necessarily spend as much time on those weaknesses. It's a different concept to think about, but one we hear about a lot in our work. And as parents, we're not the only people, the only adults who have good advice. So really thinking about everyone beyond us, other family members, neighbors. My career mentor when I was in high school was a next door neighbor. When she got home from work, I'd watch her car roll in, I'd go sit on her porch and I'd talk with her. I felt like she had a lot of information that was helpful to me in planning my career path. Coaches are a good source too. Mentors in all different shapes and sizes, youth group leaders, teachers and school counselors. In Vermont, we are so fortunate. We have a position in schools called work-based learning coordinators. Students, I don't know if you know who that is in your school. They could be also called multiple pathways coordinators, flexible pathways coordinators, career development coordinators that are there and have all this information at their fingertips and can help. Oh, and I actually put a bullet to specify that up here. And around the state, there are Vermont Department of Labor. They're called job centers. I think there's about 12 of them. And they offer free services to help with everything we just talked about. So you can go into any of those when they are open, and there are career counselors that often help adults, but they take classes of students and individual students too. Okay, so does anyone have any questions or anything come up in chat? How are we doing on time, Kathi? Woohoo! So, I know you have a few minutes to switch between workshops. I'm also able to hang out here if you have any questions. Thank you so much for sharing and going out on a limb and answering those questions. Thank you.